I'm Caitlin and welcome to the Lit Review. Today we're going to be doing my May reading wrap-up, but first, some housekeeping. So I'm really excited to bring you the May reading wrap-up, but I also really feel like I need to be real with you all and talk about some things that are hitting hard here as we skate our way into June. There's a lot going on in the US right now. There's a lot going on in the world right now. Some of the things I can't even begin to offer a litany of words for how I'm feeling or how others must be feeling because their pain is so much more heightened than mine. But what I can do with this small corner of the internet is to elevate voices and to show how I am working as an ally to make this space and our community overall better. And of course, I'm being a little vague because there's just too much to name right now, truly. But the racial situation in America is a disaster. And we all know it. And it's just coming to a head. Maybe it needs to. I think it might need to. But what I really want to say today is that I'm adding a book to my June TBR, which I published last week. And at the time, I did not know about some of the resources I do now, so I'm sharing them with you now. So I'm adding White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo to my June TBR because Books with Shay here on YouTube is doing a read-along from June 5th to June 19th, or Juneteenth, which is when I believe the last of these slaves in the US were emancipated. But this is a really good book that she has recommended that we as a community come together and read. And it is just one of many resources that a lot of collaborators and creators have put out there. So I am going to link Shay's channel down below with her ReadAthon announcement. I've just discovered her channel via Twitter and am very eagerly listening and loving her content, even above and beyond her book club, her read-along for this month. And then I'm also going to link some other resources below, and these are also like people I'm relatively new to following. I did find this person based on the Asian ReadAthon read-along for Little Fires Everywhere, and her name is Olivia, so it's iLivy for books. I will link her channel. She has got a great short-form video that just came out that is talking about some recommendations for you from like Black creators, whether that's authors and or YouTubers who, you know, you might enjoy and might like expand your horizons in ways that I thought were really impactful and powerful. I found some really awesome people through that video, so I'd like to link that for you below. And then I've also been following on Twitter and now here on YouTube, Myona Reads. I will link her channel below as well. She on Twitter gave some really great resources for books that she feels particularly seen by in terms of fiction. So these are just baby steps of what we can do to make people in our community feel seen, heard, valued. And Olivia pointed out in her video that it's not enough to just follow these folks and then like not follow through on being a subscriber. So make sure that you're watching their content all the way through. Leave a comment if you can, like be a good subscriber, be a good BookTube citizen. It's such a small thing to show that we're there and that we mean it. So I will also link some resources if you would care to donate to any of the funds. I'm not pushing that on you. It's just information and an option for you, but I do think it's important, and it's just, again, showing action instead of just vocalizing allyship is really important, and it's something that has been weighing a lot on my heart, and I need to be honest with you guys. So there's all that information. I know that was a very long introduction. Let us get to the May reading wrap-up. So, as predicted, it was not as big of a month for reading for me as March and April were, but I did read 7 books this month, and then one of these is not pictured because it's an audiobook, but we will go through them all together after I have given you the stats breakdown. So, as I said, I've read 7 books, and I've read, within those 7 books, 2,137 pages. Because I did listen to an audiobook, that means I have 7 hours and 48 minutes of listening, because the one I read was fairly short. And then my average rating for this month is actually kind of high. It's a 3.57. And I didn't have like a very up and down reading month in terms of quality. Everything was a 3 or above. And then my audience, it was almost fairly divided. There was just one more in one different category. So I have 4 in the category of adult audience and 3 in young adult. And my ratings, I didn't have any DNFs, no 1 stars, no 1.5 stars, no 2 stars, no 2.5 stars. I did have 2 3 stars, 2 3.5 stars, and math is tricky sometimes, and 3 4-star reads. So no 5-star reads either, no 4.5. It was a pretty clustered month in terms of my ratings, but you know what? It wasn't a bad month. It was a good month for reading. And then in terms of genres, the 3 most popular genres on my list were contemporary, historical, and fantasy. And then formatting. I did listen to 1 audiobook, like I said. No ebooks this month. And everything else, all the remaining 6 were physical copies. And of those books, 6 of them were owned, and 1 was borrowed from the library, and that was the audiobook. So, not that bad. It's actually a pretty sweet setup for my month. But let's now get into the books proper. So the first thing I read this month was my audiobook. It had been something that I'd been dithering about listening to for a while. I'd checked it out, had to return it, never listened to it, but I finally got around to it, and that is Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. I will make sure to put a picture somewhere over here. And I loved the movie. I am a weird reader sometimes in that I like to watch the movie or the TV show before reading the book, because then I feel like the show or the media can't hurt me. It can't betray me by having information I don't know. And I often feel like the reading experience is that much richer even when I know things are happening ahead of time. So I did it backwards from what people typically like to do. But I did find it to be a really rewarding listening and reading experience as an audiobook. Armie Hammer was the narrator, and he is the voice of Oliver in the film, or the person who plays Oliver in the film. And it was just so much more impactful hearing it in his voice somehow. And it's my first Andre Aciman book. I gave Call Me By Your Name 4 stars. I felt like it was just this really powerful ode to first love and first serious lust, and how obsessive that can feel, and how all-consuming, and how when you're at a certain young age, you just feel like it could go on forever, and then the heartbreak that eventually comes with the realization that it won't. And so there are some people, I think, that have concerns about this book being grooming a little bit because of the slight age, or the age gap. And I understand that concern. I didn't feel uncomfortable reading this because of the way it is written from Elio's perspective. And so that may just be me as a reader. If that's a concern for you, if that kind of age gap and age difference is a concern for you, maybe shy away from this. But I really liked the book. I keep thinking about it. I know there's a sequel. I think I'm probably going to try to read that sometime in the future. But I do think on audiobook, the sequel is read by somebody different. And I listened to a sample of it, and I did not like that person's narration. So I will be probably trying to do that with a physical book or an ebook instead. Call Me By Your Name, 4 stars. Good way to start off the month. And then I got into my Asian ReadAthon books, and the first one I picked up from that was Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. So Permanent Record was my read a book recommended by an Asian, just for identity rep or things that they felt were done well. And Mary H.K. Choi is Korean American as an author identity. And I got this book recommended, not personally, but Books with Chloe. She said this was one of her favorites. She felt really seen by it. She really loved the characters. And which I could totally get. Permanent Record follows Pablo, who works in a bodega, a health food bodega, and he's kind of stuck. He's stuck in his life. He doesn't fully know what he wants to do. Everybody thinks college is the right call, and having a future is this grand thing, and he's not feeling that. Until one day, a young woman comes into the bodega really late at night named Leanna Smart. And it just so happens that Leanna Smart is a mega pop star. And they strike up a friendship that quickly turns into something more. And the book itself is so much more than that relationship. It is way more about Pablo and his discovery and his depression and like feeling like he's stuck and how to get himself unstuck. So the relationship is really just like a portion of that, and it is something he realizes for himself. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed the heck out of it. I really loved the writing style. I loved the depression and anxiety rep, and specifically I loved the rep around how other people were trying to approach and help him and how he rejected them and then like slowly had to cope with that. Because I think other books sometimes don't get that nuance right for me as a reader. I also think there's some really good discussions about how complicated family dynamics are, how complicated like racial and immigrant identity is for these individuals. Like, it is a really just an all-around well-written book. What kept it from being above a 4-star was that I felt like the ending for me as a reader was a bit abrupt. Like, I think what Choi was going for was to just really do a slice of life and to leave it where it made sense. Like, she probably felt that the amount of closure she gave us for Pablo was good. I felt like I didn't want it to, without giving any spoilers, I didn't want it to end in the specific way it did because I felt like his story was so much more than precisely how this ended. So like, that's me being a little picky, but I still highly recommend this and really, really enjoyed it. I can't wait to read her other book, Emergency Contact, because this was her sophomore novel, her second book, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. So good get for Asian Readathon. The next book I read for the Asian Readathon was Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Ngan. So this was for choose a author or character that identifies in a different way than you. And this worked on a lot of different levels because Natasha Ngan identifies as Chinese, Malaysian, English. She also identifies as disabled. And then her characters are in a female-female relationship. While there are no like strict identifying words, that is a different relationship than the one I'm currently in. So, but I really love the way Ngan writes. This is the sequel to Girls of Paper and Fire. I do think this book struggled a little bit from second book syndrome. I ended up giving it a 3-star rating for me, and here's why. While I love and treasure the way that Natasha Ngan writes about trauma, and specifically trauma around sexual abuse, because both of her main characters really have suffered under that. And a lot of other characters have suffered different kinds of trauma that I think she writes really eloquently about, and she's so good about giving trigger warnings and resources in her books, and I think this is what authors should be doing when they take on these difficult subjects. I felt like I wasn't as connected to the characters in this book, in part because it's a lot of plot setup, and it's a lot of new people that you don't have the same amount of time to emotionally connect with as you did in book 1. So it's a big adventure plot, which is good. It's moving the story forward. I didn't connect as deeply with the characters in this one because of the fast pace of the plot, and I kind of need both. I need both to be a happy reader, and I think that's me just discovering that I'm a bit more character-driven than I thought I was. But it's still a lovely book. I'm very much looking forward to the 3rd and final book. I believe it's supposed to be a trilogy, which I think might be coming out later this year. I don't remember the title name. If I can find it, I'll put it somewhere. But these have consistently been really good reads for me, even if they are not, even if this one didn't blow me away as much as the first one did. I'm looking forward to seeing how the book ends, or the trilogy ends. Then, for Asian Readathon, I also read A Crown of Wishes by Roshani Chokshi. This is, so Roshani Chokshi identifies as Filipino Indian, and this was for the prompt, read a book with a character or an author that you identify with in some way. And so the one of the main characters in here is female. Roshani Chokshi herself identifies as female, and so that is how I identify, and that is how I came to this book. It is the sequel to A Crown of Wishes, so I was really also trying to read a lot of my outstanding sequels for this readathon. I gave this one 3 stars as well. I liked the first book a little bit more, so I feel like that was kind of the theme of this month. It's like second books syndrome is catching up to some folks. This was, again, still written in that really romantic, fluid eloquent fairy tale style that I'm really drawn in by. It's for some people it might be a little purple prose, but I was okay with it. I thought it was very dreamy. I thought it contributed to the feeling that you are like reading a contemporary myth or like a contemporary retelling of a myth. But the characters that we follow in here are characters that were mentioned as either secondary characters or sometimes even tertiary characters in the Book of Crown of Wishes, but this time they're getting their own tales. So it's Gowri, the Princess of Barada, who has been exiled by her brother, who is not a nice dude, but she really wants what's best for her country and is willing to do just about anything for it. And she's really, the mistakes she's made along the way weigh really heavily on her heart. And she is in a position where Vikram, the king of or the soon-to-be king of a neighboring country, convinces her to join a magical tournament where the winners will gain a wish. And she's really skeptical of magic. Vikram really believes in it. So you get both of their perspectives throughout the novel, and I really enjoy multi-perspective novels, so that was a great reading experience. And, you know, things happen. It's a really magical tournament. They start to potentially fall from one another, as is this book's way. But it is such an interesting and well-developed world-building experience with complex mythologies, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. What I wasn't as thrilled by is, again, I just wasn't as invested in these characters, and it was a book I liked. 3 stars is a good rating for me. Again, I always feel like I need to clarify this. 3 stars means I liked it. I would recommend this to somebody that I think would like it, but maybe the breadth of who I'm recommending it to isn't as wide as like a 4 or a 5 star. So I enjoyed this. I will be keeping... Oh, you know what I haven't been doing? I haven't been telling you whether I'm keeping things or not. Hot damn! Okay, so if you have seen my last couple of reading wrap-ups, I have 2 boxes next to me on the floor here. I have a no box for when I'm not keeping this, it's gonna leave my life, and I will do an unhaul when that finishes stacking up. And then I have a maybe box. I have a maybe box that will go into if I'm not sure if I want to reread it or if I need to keep it on my shelves, but I want to give it some time and space so that I can make an informed decision, because often if I make decisions off the cuff, I end up regretting it. So let me backtrack for you. This one is going to go, I think I'm actually going to keep it because it's a duology and I really loved the first one, so I feel like I need to keep this. I also tabbed it towards the end because she's really poetic and nice, so even though this was a 3 star, because it's part of a series I value, I'm going to keep it. Same with Girls of Storm and Shadow. I didn't like it as much as the first one, but I really liked the first one. And there's a 3rd one coming out, so I really would like to keep this. I may reevaluate down the road if, I don't feel strongly about the 3rd one. Maybe I only keep the first one. But for now, it stays. And then I'm also keeping Permanent Record because I thought this was really impactful. So far, nothing has changed. I just need to communicate better that I am keeping these books. And then, so in my June Litland, I talked about how I was slow on making some progress, but basically in the last week, I have motored through some books. So as of a couple of weeks ago, I hadn't finished the rest of the books that I'm going to talk to you about now, which is, hey, go me, I finished some stuff. But Dear Mrs. Bird by A.J. Pierce was my next read in May, and I really, really enjoyed this. This was such a good palate cleanser of a novel. It is so charming and so staunchly optimistic. But it was a 3.5 star for me, so I really enjoyed it. I think there were a couple things that kept me from having it reach a 4 star for me, and I'll go into that in a minute, but let me give you the summary first. So this book takes place in London during the Blitz, where German pilots were bombing London on a regular basis. And so we follow Emmeline Lake, or Emmy, and she wants nothing more than to be a lady war correspondent and thinks that's the job she's getting into. But it turns out she applied for a job and got the job at as a agony aunt, or an assistant to an agony aunt. And it turns out that the person whose name is being used, Mrs. Bird, is actually really mean to some of the people she responds to, and it doesn't sit right with Emmy. So she decides that she's going to try to fix it. And so this is her story of surviving the Blitz and her friends and the life that she builds to try to find happiness along the way. It is funny. I laughed out loud a couple times. I shed a couple of tears at a specific scene that I will not discuss with you because it's spoilery as all get out. But I thought this was really nice, and it was weirdly cathartic for me to be reading it right now in the time of COVID, because even though the situations are very different, like, I really understood so much empathetically of where Emmy and her friends were coming from with this, like, buck up, gotta stay positive attitude. So again, I acknowledge that they're very different situations, but it struck a chord for me. And the things that I didn't enjoy as much about the book, this is another book where I didn't love the ending. I felt like the ending was so abrupt. So unlike with Girls of Storm and Shadow, Dear Mrs. Bird felt like we just, like, got cut off at a point where I was like, whoa, we could have had a couple more chapters. Like, I'm not satisfied with where you're leaving me. This also did this kind of cutesy thing in the writing style that was just started to grate on my nerves, where she, like, capitalized phrases, A.J. Pierce capitalized phrases too frequently, and it was meant to be, like, kind of charming. Okay, so I think I found a good example of it. Remember I told you that she wants to be a lady war correspondent? That's how she describes it. And in her head, she will capitalize the lady war correspondent. And she does this with, like, a bunch of different things, either in her own head, but also when she's, like, talking to people, other people will randomly capitalize phrases in a ways that just, like, it felt twee. It felt, like, too cute, too silly, and it just, like, kind of, every time it happened, and the more frequently it happened, it would just, like, pluck me out of the novel for a few seconds, and I would, like, roll my eyes and then go back in. So while I do think this novel is very charming and sweet, there were moments where that was, like, too much of a stylistic choice for me in the writing. But I do still really recommend this, especially if you need something a little uplifting, or if you're a fan of different perspectives of World War history, especially World War II. So this was cute. I liked it. It was a pretty quick read. I finished it in like a day and a half, 2 days, so it was good for that too. I would recommend this to a lot of different people, but there were some stylistic things that drove me a little nuts. So I did give this a 3.5 stars, which normally would put it in the maybe box. But I do think it is one that I'd like to keep just because I got such a good emotional response out of it. Then I read Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. And this was, if you remember from my May TBR, this was something I picked up because of an Instagram poll. This was my miscellaneous challenge for May's Litland. And I'm really glad to have read it. It is good. I'm like really afraid to talk about this because I feel like this book was so hyped up a couple of years ago, and it's still kind of hyped to an extent. Like, a lot of people love talking about this thing. I'm gonna put it down because it's messing up my white balance. Like, whoa. But I didn't dislike it. I just didn't love it like a lot of other people did. I gave it a 3.5 stars. I consume a lot of content around the Trojan War. Like, it is one of my favorite events or time periods to try to read fiction about. Some of my favorite novels of all time come from that space. So I think sometimes the problem with that is that when you've read a high volume about a certain topic or era or genre, you can get a little desensitized or a little critical of things because you've consumed so much of it. It happens. So I liked this novel. Again, a 3.5 star rating is quite good. It means I liked it. I would recommend it to a significant amount of people with some caveats. For me, this caveat was that I did not feel as emotionally invested in the characters, perhaps because of the way Patroclus' perspective is written. I think Madeline Miller writes with a lot of empathy. She writes with a lot of care. And I weirdly wanted more romance. I feel like some people really think that this is like the right amount of romance, maybe because I'm also a romance reader. This did not feel like enough romance for me. And so I wanted more of that. What this book does really well, though, because I don't want to make it seem like I didn't enjoy it, I enjoyed it a lot. It has such a stark and painful sense of dramatic irony in a way that was like very enjoyable as a reader. And dramatic irony here being where you as an audience member know something that the characters do not. And so if you're familiar with the story of Troy, and particularly Achilles and Patroclus' journey through the Iliad, you know what's going to happen to these folks. And so when they talk about, I won't say it because it's a spoiler, but like there's a specific line in the book that they parrot back to one another as like a teasing precaution. And every time they do it, it was just like a little knife just twisting. But that was the kind of agony that I enjoyed as a reader. So, you know, I've got issues. But it was really good for that. The dramatic irony was excellent. I really enjoyed the fact that this was a story told from a different character's perspective. Like, you get almost too much of Achilles in certain retellings, and I really liked that this was from Patroclus' perspective. But I also just felt like his character development was that he loved Achilles. And that was the majority of it for me. Like, that's like, he does learn to do things like heal. He does, you know, have like some sensitivity and like just general kindness. Like, he's very well loved for. But it just felt like almost all of his decisions after he meets Achilles are about Achilles. And like, on one hand, I get it, but on the other hand, I'm like, emotional attachment does not character depth make. So, I'm sorry if that's controversial. I really am. I know a lot of people love this book. I liked it. And that's it. I need to stop apologizing for my own emotions. You're here to hear what I think. It's okay if you don't agree with me. 3.5 stars. I would like to still read Circe. I like her writing style. It was a very easy read. It was a very quick read. And I felt like it was paced very well. So if you like Troy stories, if you wanted a tender romance, like, give this a go, because it is really nice. It just wasn't hitting the same notes that I think it hits for the average reader, or has hit for the average reader. It was something that maybe the hype train sped by me a little too fast and I didn't catch up. I think that's probably what happened here. This one, however, I think goes in the maybe box. I need to sit with it for a little while and see if I would like to reread it. I'm glad to have read it in the first place, but I'm not sure if it's a full-time keeper for me. So this is the first book, actually, this month that is going in the maybe box. All right, so then the last one. This was my last outstanding book for the Asian ReadAthon. And I took my time with this because I wanted to make sure I got the information out of it. But it was Spark Joy by Marie Kondo. This is the illustrated addition to her book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And so it's not fully illustrated, but there are like some cute, let me pull a tab here, some cute illustrations that, oh gosh, did I not? There we go. Like, this one tells you how to fold your underwear, things like that. So it was just like really cute and really informative, and I actually felt like very cathartic as well. If you were checking in with my reading vlogs, I was very slow in my progress of this because I was reading it mostly in like short bursts at work to give my eyes a rest from the screen, or to take up like 10 minutes before my next meeting. And so I tabbed a lot of it. I'm not sure how much of that you can see, but I have like a lot of these cute little tabs here. Some of them are for the illustrations, so I can go back and like at some point fold things properly. I have a lot of laundry to do before we can get there, but you know, okay. And then the other thing I did was I would tab something that I felt like was really resonant or helpful, or something maybe I needed to hear. I also highlighted a lot in this book. And so I ended up really, really liking this. This was a 4-star for me. Sometimes reading books like this that are in that self-help genre feels a little weird because it's really about what you're taking away from it, not what the author's giving you. So I guess that 4-star rating should tell you how much I took away from it. I did really value a lot in this book. There were a couple of chapters that didn't resonate with me. Like, I think when her TV show on Netflix came out, there was this huge hue and cry about her stance on books. Which, you know, hey, I'm a book channel. I definitely have more books than she personally would have in her own home. But I also think that got way overblown. And I think there are just like some cultural differences that don't come across in either the show or the reading in terms of like space and how we value space here in the US versus how another country might handle space. Marie Kondo is Japanese. And that doesn't mean that people in Japan don't have huge book collections, because that's not how that works either. But I just think for her, she just has a different value structure on books. She would rather keep other things that bring her joy. Books don't seem to bring her as much joy, and that's okay. So that particular chapter, I kind of left it. I was like, okay, thank you for giving me your thoughts. Moving on. That did not stick with me. Other things stuck really freaking well. It's still a weird situation for me because I very much want to start to enact a lot of this stuff, but I'm stuck at home and can't donate or get rid of things very easily. So I may hold off on enacting a lot of the wisdom that came from this book until I can safely do that. But I do really want to return to this, which is why I tagged the living daylights out of it. And I would recommend this. It actually, as somebody who self-identifies as being like messy or cluttered, I was very intimidated by this book. It was in my "These books will self-destruct in 12 months" list because I was so intimidated by this book. And I thought it was going to like attack me, but she is so gentle and kind and caring and compassionate, and like she's really just trying to share her perspective and hopefully influence yours in a positive way. This also for the Asian Readathon filled the prompt of like just generally read a book by an Asian author. So this is what I did. This was also my nonfiction pick for May's Litland. And of course I've been talking about how much I'd like to reread this or utilize this down the road, so this is going to be kept. This is going to be a keeper for me. So I also want to start doing this thing at the end of my wrap-ups where I talk about my probably most favorite and least favorite, which might feel a little weird in this video because I liked everything I read. Like everything was a 3-star or more. So even though I'll be keeping this book for sure, and it doesn't go in the baby box, I think the one I liked the least was Girls of Storm and Shadow this month by Natasha Nian. It just didn't leave a long-term impact like some of the other books did. Even if I wasn't totally happy with them, this one just kind of left me a little ambivalent. And then it may come as a surprise to you given how I handled it up until now. But I think my most liked book was Spark Joy by Marie Kondo. I think it just gave me a lot of resources. It gave me a lot of things, very practical things to do right now, which honestly, having those practical things is huge for me in this moment in time with coping, with having some coping mechanisms for my anxiety, for my depression. And so any resource that can give you a little bit of that aid right now is super vital. And so I think this is why this was actually my favorite book of the month. But yeah, those are the books that I read this month, all 7 of them. And you know what? I'm still really proud of that. I'm still so proud of having accomplished that much when I was not sure that I would. It was a really up and down month for reading, but it kind of helped me find my way and my new job and like all the changes that are going on in my life right now. So that's kind of the gift that reading continually gives me. But I would love to hear from you if you've read any of these books, if you have very different thoughts, if you would like to recommend me something, because I am still going through my back catalog of books. Again, there are links down in the bio about all the different resources and hopefully new friends for you in the community that you can start listening to their voices as well. I highly recommend you check those out. But in the meantime, thank you for spending time with me. I hope you have a fantastic reading day. Like and subscribe if you'd like to know more about me and this channel, and I'll see you in the next one.